Hello, I'm KellyAnn Fitzpatrick with Redmonk, the developer-focused industry analyst firm. I'm here today with some thoughts on Google Cloud Next 2020 OnAir, and I'm going to start with the format. Google Cloud Next was originally supposed to be an in-person event held in San Francisco at the beginning of April. The COVID-19 pandemic meant that the event was not only moved online, but it was also postponed a few months. This gave Google a lot of time to think about the type of virtual event it wanted to run, and the result is a 9-week event that kicked off in July and ran all the way into September. In some ways, this might seem like a long time to think about a single vendor, even for an industry analyst like myself, whose job it is to cover industry news. However, the organization of the event, with each week focusing on a specific theme like security or infrastructure, meant that attendees could really focus on their areas of interest and tune in accordingly. To my mind, anything in 2020 that helps people focus at all is a good thing. Speaking of focus, I was also impressed to see week 2 devoted to productivity and collaboration. While we don't often think of technologies like G Suite or Google Meet as developer-specific technologies, what it comes down to is that we, or people we know, are all using them or something like them. So focusing on them on week 2, I think, was a really smart move. Not only do we get to hear about updates about, G Suite and especially accessibility features for G Suite, but also on things like the G Suite developer platform, which lets developers kind of customize G Suite for their organization. The bottom line for this particular week was that Google in many ways acknowledged that a lot of the attendees for this conference, and also probably Googlers themselves, are still kind of dealing with the shift to remote work and figure out how to best collaborate under these conditions. So to my mind, this really showed empathy with the audience that was tuning in, mostly probably still from their homes. So speaking of productivity and kind of shifting left with that, another theme that we saw running through the entire conference was developer velocity and enablement. We saw this in specific weeks devoted to, say, app modernization, and to the introduction of things like CAMP, or the Cloud Application Modernization Program, whose tagline is "Get to the Future Faster." But we also saw this in the emphasis on things like APIs, and even in Thomas Kurian's keynote, where he talked a lot about accelerating app modernization, transformation, and also development. Another way that Google Cloud promises to help developers build applications faster is through delivering a consistent cloud experience. As an industry, we have been bombarded with terms like hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, mobile, and edge. Google Cloud has very much taken these terms and begun to conflate them together when they've been talking about Anthos. And while they promise a framework for app modernization and tools to help speed up developer productivity, this very much sounded a lot like a lot of promises we've been getting from other vendors for years. However, as Anthos has kind of expanded its capabilities from on-prem to Google Cloud to AWS and soon to be Azure, Google really does appear to be delivering with Anthos to the point where we often hear people talking about their kind of new or potential offerings as being like Anthos. So, good job, Google, for making Anthos happen. And of course, Anthos is not the only Google Cloud product that has essentially gone multi-cloud. One of the other, to my mind, big announcements coming out of Google Cloud Next this year was the announcement that BigQuery would now be available to analyze data in Azure and AWS, meaning that you no longer would have to transfer data into Google Cloud in order to use the tool. This is great news for people who love BigQuery, and yet another reflection of Google Cloud's kind of strategy towards moving away from being just a destination and offering these types of tools that can be used in other places. Another topic we have to at least touch on is data. It is difficult to think about Google Cloud without thinking about data, and this 9-week event had a lot to offer data geeks. There were 2 weeks specifically devoted to data, one to data analytics and another to data management and databases. We also saw data pop up throughout the event, most notably during Security Week and Thomas Kurian's keynote, where he put a lot of emphasis on Google Cloud's commitment to data security and data privacy. This really fits with the overall trend where data is becoming more and more important in our industry at large. So good job to Google for making sure that this was covered, throughout their 9 weeks. And so, my overall takeaway from Google Cloud Next 2020 on air. Kudos to Google for the event and for trying out this distributed format, which I think probably worked well for a lot of people. There was a lot to like about the format, a lot to like about the good things that Google has introduced in 2020, but most of all, a lot to like about Google's empathy for where folks are in 2020 and where they want to get to in 2021 and beyond.